Okay, welcome students. In this video, we're going over solving different angle relationships that are caused by parallel lines being cut by a transversal. And on the worksheet, this first problem that we're dealing with is uh, problems 15 and 19. And let's just go through the steps of doing this. First of all, when you look at a problem, you have to decide what angle relationship needs to be used. And there's two types of angle relationships. There's the ones that are congruent. In other words, two angles have to be equal to each other. The other type are supplementary, where you add the two angles together and they're going to equal 180. So on the first one that we're doing, problem 15, you can look at them and you can see that they're alternate interior angles. So this is the type of angle that we're dealing with. So remember, the first thing you got to do is determine which angle relationship. And if it's not one of these, it has to be one of supplementary. Okay, we'll talk about those two. Probably the hardest one of the two sets will be the congruent ones, because there's 4 different types. And so you really need to remember what they look like when you have two parallel lines cut by a transversal. So the one we're dealing with is alternate interior. So after you decide what type of angles you're dealing with, either supplementary or congruent type angles, you have to write an equation. And there's 2 different types of equations. The first one is where you'll take the angles, set them equal to each other. And if they're supplementary, you have to add those 2 angles together and they equal 180. Once you get that equation, you just simply solve it for the value of x. And then once you solve it for the value of x, whatever that value is, you'll put it into the x for the bold-faced angle. Put that in your calculator and see what it evaluates to, and that'll be your answer. So after that step, used to find the bold-faced typed angle, a good thing to do is whatever value you have for x, you put it in the second one. In this case, these 2 angles should be equal, so if I put the x in the bold-faced one, it should also be the same measurement as when I put it in the other angle that it's equal to. And the same kind of goes through for the supplementary. I'll write my equation, I'll add the 2 together, I'll find the value for x, and I'll use that x to find it for the bold-faced angle. In this case, it's 17x plus 4. And when I put it in there, it's going to give me a measurement for that angle. And then I should check it against the other angle. So if I put that x into the second angle here, these 2 numbers, right, these 2 numbers I get for these 2 measurements should equal 180. So that's just a quick run view on the steps to doing these problems. Now we're going to go ahead and solve them. Okay, the first problem we're doing is problem 15. We've already identified that it's alternate interior angles, and we know that alternate interior angles are congruent. And remember, we have to find the angle for the bold-faced font. So the first thing we do, we identify the angle that we need to find. The second thing we do, we need to write an equation. Now we know these 2 angles are congruent, so this part right here, you see right here, that's where I've written the equation. The first angle here equals the second angle. Now I have to get the x by itself, so the first step of solving this equation right here is I'm going to take that -5, I'm going to get it to go to 0 by adding 5. And if I do it here, I have to do it over here. So I add 5 to each side. That goes to 0. This one over here goes to 10. Now I've got to get rid of this 11x because I only want numbers on this side. I don't want any variables. So 11x minus 11x, I subtract 11x, that will go to 0. And when it goes to 0, it's gone. And I do the same thing over here. 13 minus 11x gives me 2x. So now my final equation simples down to 2x equals 10. Now for the next step, I divide each side by 2. 2 over 2 gives me 1x. That's what I want, is 1x. And then I divide 10 by 2 and I get 5. So now I found my x for step 3. X equals 5. Now I have to find the bold-faced angle. So I'm going to take that 5, I'm going to put it in for x. I have 13x. I replace the 5 for the x, and I get -5 plus 65. So -5 plus 65 gives me 60. And now I'm going to do that 5th step, where I'm going to check it to make sure they're both equal. I put 55 in for x on the 11 times x. That gives me 55. 55 plus 5 gives me 60. So that does check out. So these problems are very, very easy to check. You just, if they're equal, if they're congruent angles, they both have to be the same number. Okay, now we're looking at problem 19, and you can identify this one as a linear pair. 17x plus 4 is the angle with the bold-faced font, so that's when I have to find the measurement for. And again, this is a linear pair, so I want to take these two equations and I want to add them together. So I have 17 plus 4 plus 9x minus 6. Now remember to collect like terms. You got to take that 17x, add it to the 9x to get 26, and I take 4, add it to the negative 6 right here, and it'll give me a negative 2. So now this equation simplifies down to 26x minus 2 equals 180. I want to get the 26x by itself, right? I want to get the negative 2 to go to 0, so I'll add 2, and I do it to each side. So the 26x is now by itself. The 180 becomes 182 by adding 2, and now this is the equation I need to finish solving. To get this to be 1x, because I only want one of them, I'm going to divide 26 into 26 to give me a 1 on the left-hand side, and then 182 divided by 26. I think it gives me a 7. I think that's the right answer. Well, we're going to go ahead and check it. So x equals 7. Now remember, we want to find the angle, and we have to find the bold-faced font one. So I'll take 17 times 7 plus 4. So 119 plus 4 gives me 123. So that is the angle, and that's the answer. Now I'm going to do the check. Now remember I said that you were going to take that x, you'll put it into the 9 times 7, 9 times x. So it'll be 9 times 7 minus 6. That gives me 63. Minus 6 is 57. Now the check for this, these two angles right here are supposed to equal 180 degrees, correct? So 123 plus 57 does give me 180 degrees. So that does check out. So let's go ahead and look at what we've done so far. Let me bring all these pieces back up. So first thing we want to do is decide the angle relationship. It doesn't matter if you have a linear pair or alternate interior. You have to decide if they're congruent angles or if they're supplementary angles. Then once you do that, remember for the congruent type angles, you set the two angles equal to each other. And if they're supplementary, you add the two angles together to get 180. Then you just simply solve each equation. Find the value for x. You can see where I did it right here. Step number 3. Step number 4, you're going to use that value to find the angle. And then once you find the angle, you're going to check one angle against the other one. Now, if they're congruent type angles, the two angles should be the same. Supplementary angles, the two angles should equal 180. Thanks for watching.